Welcome back to Munro Live. Now, you'll notice this is a little bit different. Normally, whenever we get to see a media vehicle, they'll send it to us and we'll bring it into our shop, we'll do any of our video reviews, and the only information that they would normally give us is the window sticker that came with that vehicle. Now, I do kind of like that. We get to take our time, but we have something a little bit different today. Today, we were invited to see this Kia EV4, and this is a 2026.
26 model year, most likely.
So something quite far in the future, which normally we don't get a chance to review here within Munro Live. But, Young Kim,
Yes.
product manager for the EV4, you're actually here with us to kind of talk us through some of the features.
Sure.
Now, whenever I look at a vehicle, I always try and look at, there is the what and then there's the how. So I look at from the how. Because I'm mostly in costing, I want to know how much did it cost the automotive company to produce this part? What types of technologies and features are they putting in the manufacturing process? And to see whether or not I think those materials and manufacturing processes justify the cost of the vehicle. Now, this is for the customer. Even though I'm not trying to sell any of these vehicles, I'm just trying to give you my mindset. If I am looking at a vehicle and I'm trying to find out whether or not this is a value that makes sense to me, I'm just kind of showing you those thoughts. You're coming at from a different point of view. You are actually trying to sell this vehicle.
Right.
So if you, as being the salesman and being the product manager, you've actually worked with this for quite some time, trying to put together all the bits and pieces, what would you actually try and sell me if you look at this? What am I? Who is the customer?
Sure.
Am I the customer?
Okay.
Where do you want to try and position this vehicle?
Yep. Great questions. Thank you for having me. The EV4 is actually, we've been selling EVs in the US market for 11 years now. We're seeing a transition away from some of those early adopters to more of a mainstream, majority customers, and that's who we're targeting with the EV4. Customers who are coming out of ICE vehicles, whether it's a compact sedan or a midsize sedan, and customers who are a little bit more focused on intuitiveness, ease of use. They don't want to watch YouTube videos and learn how to operate different functions. They want to just jump in the car and use it like they would a normal ICE sedan. So I think we've done a great job doing that. 3 key points that we wanted to address that are the biggest hurdles for some of these customers sitting on the fence are range. A lot of people have concerns about range anxiety. Charging infrastructure, people are concerned about where they're going to charge their car. And lastly, cost or price of the vehicle. I can't talk about pricing yet. I can say that this is designed to be priced at a more attainable price point. For the first two, you can ask questions on that, but yeah.
So for pricing, most of the EVs that we have looked at have been between the range of $30,000 at the very minimum up to, seems to be most of them average at $60,000 for the media vehicles that we get to review. Now, we've reviewed some going up to the $120,000, I think even $200,000 range, but the 30 to the 65 is what I would normally see. So when I've reviewed some of these vehicles in the past, I would say, all right, if I'm thinking at 50, do I actually see the content that justifies 50? Is it the features that are justifying the content? Is it the battery that is justifying that price? Is it the utility that's justifying that price? So I would kind of balance those things out to say, all right, is it actually worth it? Now, you're hoping to come in at a low price point, which I can't say what a price point would be because I don't even know. But until we get a little farther into some of the reviews, I would say that this would make sense at the $50,000 range from what we have seen in other things that we've looked at. The difference in styling, the interior features, but let's continue on.
Sure.
So when looking at these vehicles from the exterior, I normally don't do too much, but I look at from a cost base of what am I actually paying for to what type of design I'm getting. Now, recently we looked at the Ioniq 9 and I picked on the front fender specifically. The total breakup of all of the different trim pieces there, I do believe there was a total of 7 parts. Even though there were 7 parts, almost all of them were the exact same color. So the 9 was the highest end trim. Lots of times I would imagine that they would have individual panels that they would switch out for more of a decoration on the higher trim, but it seemed like the high trim was all the same color, which meant that all that breakup, the cost of the breakup is borne by every vehicle in the segment since they all have basically the same parts. So if I'm looking here, I have my main fender, front fascia. I have the wheel arch trim. Now I will ignore the charge port door just because wherever you put that, that's gonna have to be broken out. So in general, I have 1, 2, 3 pieces. Much lower content, but still a lot of style compared to the breakup that we saw on the 9. However, we still have this, that floating piano black line. Now, lots of times you would see this type of styling on the lower cladding of the vehicle. Normally it would be one component, but we have a door which is painted. We have a black injection molded plastic component. Then we have the same paint as the door on this lower component, and then another lower cladding. It looked to me pretty bad on that Ioniq 9. This one, I don't think it's too bad. I do believe for the manufacturing process, when they were actually painting this entire vehicle body, that lower gray is included in that. So having that being a breakup, it's not something that I would pick on too much, but that was different on the Ioniq 9. So Young, for this vehicle, as you said, people care about their range. People care about how fast they're going to be able to charge it.
Right.
To address those things, what have you been able to do? Are these targets, or are you actually achieving what you want?
So our target range, maximum target range for the EV4 is 330 miles. This is not an EPA figure right now, but we're hoping that we can get a little bit better than this. This will be the leading AER of our EV lineup. This addresses a lot of those fears, concerns about range anxiety that some of the fence sitters may have. So we'll be able to help with that transition from ICE to EV.
All right, so let's dive into that a little bit. You know, just because you've done market research about how much people are actually using their cars per day. You're talking about averages there.
Yep.
So when you see that average, what do you say is that average of what is someone actually using per day?
Average per day is a lot lower than that 300, but you know, people, I think it's more of a always thinking about that, 5 to 10% situation where they may go on a road trip and they're like, what would I do in that situation? So I think people do harp on that a little bit more. We see that a lot less with people who own EVs. Once they get used to having that a certain amount of range, that fear goes away because they know they'll be able to charge when they'll need to charge. It's just more of a concern for people who haven't experienced EVs yet.
So I would almost compare that to a truck driver. People who decide they want to buy a pickup truck and they say, I can tow this much weight. Great. How often have you towed that much weight? Well, I haven't done it yet.
Right.
Like, okay, so did you waste all that money to have a truck capable of towing that much weight? And if you came out with an EV that had a 600-mile range, wonderful. It'd be $40,000 more expensive, and how often are you using that extra range?
Right.
So there is a buyer, there is a customer that will be very happy within this range. Some of it you just almost have to convince them of that, however.
They just need to get in an EV and experience it themselves.
Now, this is a sedan. Now, you've talked about the early adopters. Some of those early adopters really liked, what kind of launch speed once I hit that accelerator pedal? What am I reaching? But we're getting past some of those enthusiast buyers now. What are we expecting for this?
We're expecting a lot more mainstream customers, customers that may be coming out of a compact sedan or a traditional midsize sedan. For those customers, they're not so concerned about the fastest 0 to 60 time. They don't want the latest technology. They like technology, but they don't want something that is hard to use, right? So with the EV4, we really focused on usability and making the car drive more refined and similar to a traditional ICE sedan.
So this is a fastback sedan. Now, because of that, you'll see our trunk actually ends right here. Looking at this roof line and I guess those spoiler designs, you would almost assume that a hinge would be hit up there and this whole thing would lift up. All right. The first time I had to get a hatchback, I actually didn't like it. I preferred my sedans. I like my big cars. From your point of view, I think a lot of people really switched to those hatchbacks and they became very popular for many years up until now. but you're going backwards. For the sedan, why is that important?
For the sedan customer, which does make up a majority of the compact segment, these customers are not fully focused on having the most cargo capacity or that versatility of the hatchback. For those customers that do want it, all of our other EVs are hatchbacks or CUVs, and we're offering a third or second body style for those customers who just want something that's more of a daily driver, going to be used for more of a commuting purpose.
So with this fastback style, you're getting the aerodynamics. You are moving the hinge, so you're not having the hinge up in this headliner. Right. As you had said earlier, by doing that, you are getting a little bit more headroom for the rear seat occupant. Now, this is a sedan, but it's still more of a entry-level vehicle, lower cost vehicle. So have to do my stuntman routine here. Whenever I would look at these vehicles, I would always try and sit in a lot of the different seats. Some vehicles I just say right on camera, no, I'm not getting in there. But for me, my body size is still fairly large. My headroom. My head does touch the headliner, but just barely, not in an uncomfortable way. I cannot quite hit the headrest full on if I'm sitting with my hips all the way back, but this is more headroom, more legroom than I've seen in a lot of the hatchbacks that we have reviewed. So that makes it more comfortable for me. I still pick on this. So we've seen this a few times. They have this injection molded back panel. The back panel is giving this component right here. If I look at that, what is that? That is a handle. If I'm getting out of the vehicle, I am grabbing this feature. Now, I have to admit, I am a very heavy person, and I always question whether this component can actually take my weight. Now, a designer could say, well, this is for decoration. It's not really meant to be a handle. Anytime you design a feature like this that's in a car, you can't tell the customer what they're doing. This is a handle that is helping me get out of that vehicle. I think, in my own personal opinion, that's a feature that just should not exist. If you're giving the possibility of damage, especially for people like me, if it is damaged, they won't blame themselves, which I should blame me. They won't blame the seat, they're going to blame the car maker. So that's a feature that I personally would get rid of. So again, I do not have an actual price point for this vehicle. We're expecting that it would come in towards the lower range of the electric vehicles that we reviewed in the past. But in doing that, looking at the interior features, knowing the technology that went into making these individual components and the type of comfort and luxury that they're providing to us, let's see what we have. We have a thermoformed skin on the upper panel. We have a vac-formed mid panel. This feels like an actual wrapped armrest supporting our switches. Now again, even though there is a lot of shiny piano black on the exterior of the vehicle, no piano black around the switches, those are matched to the interior color. This type of look cascades off to the instrument panel. We have that vac-formed, thermoformed upper panel. Now this does not carry over into the door. The styling kind of does a little bridge. I like that because if you try and perfectly match it from the door to the IP, any inconsistency in the build will be enhanced. So having something that purposely breaks the component, I think is good by design if you're looking at quality fit and finish issues. When we look at the material and styling of the seats, I want to focus on the material itself. Okay, a cut and sew seat, that's what you see on everything, but look at this insert panel. It looks like it is a sewn pattern, but it's not. This is my actual only sewn line in the cushion. These are all formed into the skin material. So this panel is basically made by machine. It's not made by hand. So we're seeing a lot of style in a feature that is not really costing us a lot in labor, a lot in effort. So I like that they were able to integrate that. It does not look inexpensive. It looks high end, but they have a reduction cost in labor for that. Why are the shifters like this?
Why are the shifters like that? What do you mean?
Okay, so we basically have 3 stalks on the center console.
Right.
Now, they've had shifter buttons on the center console, stalks on the steering column.
Sure.
They have buttons on the IP. they have a shifter that is tied to one of these stalks.
Right.
But the third stalk, I think, is somewhat unique.
We've been doing it that way on the EV9. And,
Which I saw.
Yep. And customers liked it a lot, so we're kind of transitioning that to our other EVs too. It opens up a lot of space in the center console for you to use as storage, and it's kind of simplifies the design of the overall interior. But
so for my own personal opinion prejudice, this is something that I would not like. However, you're saying that you do have customer feedback and the buyers do like this type of a feature.
Yeah, just having all the controls for the vehicle right around the steering wheel so you don't have to move your hands that much.
All right, but that is something that would still take time to get used to. In your normal driving, you'd have to be used to the function of this.
Yeah.
So that is a slight learning curve.
Yeah, I think that's the only key learning curve for getting out of an ICE vehicle and into this vehicle is that shifter.
I mean, so carrying over, this may be a learning curve, but let's look at the center console. Or the center of the IP, the center console, is separated. On a lot of the early adopter vehicles, we saw getting rid of all of the buttons, all the switches, moving them to a center screen. Then you have customers that complain, well, I don't want to have to try and navigate a screen while I'm driving. Buttons actually perform a function, the fact that you have muscle memory. I don't have to see the button. I know what that button is going to do.
Right.
You're giving back the buttons in a lot of this vehicle.
Yes.
I like that. Some people would not like that. But again, your market, your customer, you're going past the early adopters and you're going to a more mass market. I think that that is important. I think that it will be very, very helpful to get more people on board to be able to purchase a vehicle like this.
Yeah, just jumping out of a K4 and jumping into this car, there's a very small learning curve, right? And all the controls are exactly where customers expect them to be.
Cool. Now, I've had a criticism on a lot of the Kias and the Hyundai vehicles that I've torn down. I have detested every single one of the center consoles. Mostly it's the internal mechanisms in the center consoles that I felt that they were overdone. Now, with the EV9 that we reviewed for the Hyundai, we saw that that was a completely sliding center console, which meant that they have a track mechanism built into the structure. This is a more simplified center console. It's more fixed, attaching to the floor. We do have an armrest, very small bin. This floating peninsula does add some into the structure because now we have a injection molding tool that is drafted in this direction, then a lower cap that's drafted in another direction, and then we have the metal or maybe plastic structure that is supporting all that. So there will be a slight increase for supporting this floating peninsula, but the rest of the mechanism looks like it is fairly reduced. So I don't know if I will ever get a chance to actually tear one of these down, but I would expect this to be much simpler and much less costly than the others that I've reviewed and torn down. So notice the air vents. Now, this is actually quite a wide opening for the air vents. Now, when we look at tests on some of those others where they're actually controlling the airflow by opposing blowers rather than having a physical vent, we have a physical vent, but there are 4 vents across this vehicle. They are not in line, but they do fit into character lines within the vehicle styling. So we have 2, which are lower here, nice wide open. I can angle it towards me, the driver. But look at the ends. The air vents on the ends are actually raised up to another split line in the vehicle. I like that because from the outside here, this is actually accessible through or over the steering wheel. If my air vent was in line down here, it's completely blocked. So function-wise, this is better. But if I'm talking to an actual studio designer, the people who want to draw these lines, they always want to draw something nice and straight or in line in their mind. Sometimes straight isn't straight. So speaking with those studio designers saying, for the function of the vehicle, for the use of the customer, repositioning that vent, but still fitting it into the overall design theme, it's worthwhile, it's important. Sometimes you can say that to a designer and they will understand, they will work with you. Some of them, it will take about 2 months of arguing before you can actually get them to agree to move or change something. Okay, I have to point out one other thing. Now, when we tear down a vehicle at Munro, lots of times the first things that we pull out are the batteries and powertrain, and then we have to work through and tear down everything else. You have to be very, very careful on a lot of the EVs because everything is electronically controlled, and sometimes we will shut a door while the vehicle has absolutely no power and there's no way for us to get inside of it. So I just wanted to make mention of the fact that there is an actual mechanical lock behind the door handle on this vehicle. So if you did not have power and you still needed to get inside, you could. I only want to bring that up just because it has been a problem before at Munro during our vehicle teardowns where we've basically bricked a car and can't get inside of it. I just thought that was interesting. So I moved the driver's seat far forward for me to get into the vehicle. However, even in a normal seating position, I was still quite comfortable on the passenger side. Looking at this vehicle, okay, grab handles. We pick on grab handles and costing, like, are people actually using them? What's the benefit? There are 4 of them in the overhead. Lots of vehicles that we've looked at, they've actually gone down to 3, and they've removed the grab handle from the driver. So what is the rationale behind that? There is always someone in the driver's seat. So that person always needs to get out of the vehicle. And they make the argument, well, the steering wheel is a good enough grab handle. I don't need an overhead grab handle. For me, I try and get rid of the overhead grab handles everywhere. I don't see their use. But we have 4 of them within this vehicle. I did make mention of the grab point in the back of the front seats. It's a feature I personally do not like. I think that it gives the possibility of damage. It gives the possibility of giving the customer the wrong impression of what this actually is. We do have the USB ports on the sides of the seat. We make mention of the fact that this type of panel, this type of seat may go into many different vehicles that may or may not have a center console. So there's debate of, should I put that port in the seat, which there's always going to be a seat, or should I put it in the center console? The center console may seem like it would be easier to use, but that is a feature that may not always be in the vehicle where this is. We do have air vent controls within the center console and a small cubby, but this is fairly utilitarian. Even though it's utilitarian, however, I'm comfortable. The seat is comfortable underneath me, across my back. My head, I can't really use the headrest in a good seating position, but my body size, I am comfortable within this vehicle. So just on that alone impresses me that they can still manage to fit a person like me. So planned low-cost entry-level vehicle. Let's see what we have in for a Frunk. And of course we don't have a Frunk. Just some beauty covers over top of the mechanical systems. Now even this, I don't even have a shock or a damper for the hood. So kind of old school with just a rod. If in total, this saves you $100 in components across the assembly of the vehicle. Let's say the component cost is $100. Then you have the cost for the OEM to install them. Then you have the markup for the entire vehicle. Let's say they want to have a 20% profit margin. So now I'm paying profit on top of a shock that I'm not really using because this is a service-only bay. If that brings down the total vehicle cost by $150, $170, would you rather pay $170 less for a vehicle and not have a shock, or would you rather have a shock and pay that more? So those types of things run through my head, but I'm crazy. So thank you very much for watching Munro Live and our review of the new 2026 Kia EV4. And thank you very much, Young, for walking me through some of these features and letting us come here and review this pre-build vehicle, pre-launch vehicle. Yeah. Normally we would not get that opportunity. So I really, really do want to thank you for giving me that opportunity.
Yeah, thanks for coming here. I can't wait for you to drive the car.
That would be nice too. Yeah. So from us at Munro Live, we hope you've enjoyed this video, and please stay tuned for future videos and any other reviews that in the far future we may be able to do of the Kia EV4. Have a good day.